Good afternoon, everybody. This is Shakeeb. Um, I think it's time to start the session.
Yes, sir.
Shall we
Yes, sir.
begin?
Uh, uh, I'll start.
Shall we
Uh,
start?
yeah.
Or shall we be waiting for
I.
some?
Yes, sir, I think we can start the session. Uh,
Okay.
so, a very good afternoon to everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on time for our COVID-19 Academy session. As you know, the COVID-19 Academy is a joint capacity building initiative of the NIDM, UNICEF, WHO India, HCL Foundation, and Sphere India for volunteers and outreach workers across the country. We have a very special session planned today called the World Braille Day. World Braille Day, celebrated since 2019, is observed to raise awareness and make people understand the importance of Braille as a means of communication in the full realization of the human rights for blind and partially sighted people. Braille is used by blind and partially sighted people to read the same books and periodicals as those printed in a visual font. It is a tactile writing method that is used by people who have slight impairments or are blind. It is a special code made from 6 raised dots on a grid. So it is hoped that by highlighting the methods which we can implement to support those who are blind, the world will make a greater attempt to promote inclusion. Today, we have very eminent panelists to share their expertise with us today. We have a moderator, Mr. Shakeeb Ahmed Khan. He is an independent disability right and inclusion consultant based at Bangalore. In 10 years of his professional life, he has worked with United Nations Development Programme, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, CBM, and various government and intergovernmental agencies for healthcare, rehabilitation, skill development, inclusive disaster risk reduction and emergency response, and mainstreaming. Apart from graduation in physiotherapy from Maharashtra University in Health Sciences, Nashik, he believes it's only inclusion which is the way forward for achieving sustainable goals. We're delighted to have you here with us, Sir Shakeeb. I would request you to give your opening remarks for the session and introduce the other speakers. I give the rest of the time to you, sir.
Thank you, Rachel. Good afternoon, everybody. It's indeed a great honor to moderate the session when we have the presence of various eminent speakers, both from the government and international and non-government organization. We are observing this session, observing this program at a time of a disaster. And this is just not a observance of World Braille Day, which we generally observe for on the birthday of Louis Braille, but it is also about observing, celebrating inclusion. When we are talking about this issue, we do understand that Braille has opened the plethora of opportunities for persons with visual disabilities, person with blindness. However, the challenges still remain very high. There are so many challenges that a person with visual disabilities face on day-to-day basis. In spite of advancement of the technology, in spite of advancement of having more and more accessible devices. But as we all know, the large number of persons with disabilities are in rural areas. Uh, Many of them are engaged in formal, non-formal livelihood. Access to communication, access to technology still remain a challenge. No doubt, we must observe this day. We must say it's a happy World Braille Day. But I hope with this webinar that we have organized, the challenges of person with visual
audio now unmuted alert.
And since we have many eminent speakers from government, and especially as I mentioned, we are talking at a time of disaster, the pandemic is going on, the healthcare access for the person with visual disabilities, the relief for a person with visual disabilities at the time of disaster, can they be addressed? Can there be have a humanitarian approach towards them? That also need to be focused on. So not much taking more time, I'll just introduce our eminent panelists who are there on today. We have resource person, Professor Anil Gupta, professor from National Institute of Disaster Management. He's a risk management strategist working in the area of disaster management, environment, and climate resilience for more than 25 years with national, subnational, and business administration. He is currently full professor and head of India's National Institute of Disaster Management, Division of Environment and Disaster Risk Management. Thank you, Professor Anil Gupta, to have you here. And I'm sure the suggestion that would come in this webinar, that we hope that through your good office, we can take it to the government, especially when it comes to disaster risk reduction, as well as emergency response and addressing the need of persons with visual disabilities. We have eminent panelist, Mr. Jacob Deep from World Vision India. Mr. Jacob is National Coordinator Advisor for Disability Initiative for the World Vision India since July 19, 2010, supporting disability inclusion and mainstreaming in organizational policies and programmatic intervention, and leads and ensures the implementation of World Vision India disability inclusion strategy. We also have Mr. Shiva Mohan Rao, who has 22 years of experience in promoting well-being of persons with different disabilities and eagerness to make a contribution in areas of inclusive development, livelihood, healthcare, and education. Mr. Jose K. Korean from Handicap International. I think the Handicap International name has changed. It is Humanity and Inclusion. And it is also previous recipient of Nobel Peace Prize for their work on disability and demining, if I am correct.
Yes.
Mr. Jose Korean is a disability and employment advisor with Humanity and Inclusion. He has been working on disability inclusion and right-based program for over 18 years, working on employability, socio-economic inclusion, physical rehabilitation, and inclusive education. We also have Dr. Victor John Cordero. I'm sure everybody must be knowing, especially person in disability sector, is very familiar with Dr. Victor. He's a manager policy advocacy and resource development for Samathanam Trust for Disabled since 2018. He aspires for inclusive, just, fair, and egalitarian society which accommodates all people with diversities. He has been there in our disability sector for more than 18 years and working with national and international development agencies. The other panelist is Ms. Ash H. Kiba from Nagaland Disability Forum. Ms. Ash H. Kiba herself is a person with disability, and she is a disability right activist also, and General Secretary of Nagaland State Disability Forum. She discovered her real identity and accept herself as a person with disability from 2015, since there is nothing that could stop her from loving and accepting her as she is. I welcome you, Ms. Ash. From government side, we have Dr. Suraj Singham, who is an ophthalmologist working with All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Dr. Suraj worked on assistive technology for visual impairment and published more than 60 papers in peer review paper, including index. He has designed a new and simplified classification of assistive technology for the education of students with visual disabilities on student activities performed at schools for the blind. Dr. Suraj, I welcome you. And we all know how much good RP Center is doing work, especially in terms of low vision and for integrating people with visual disabilities in the mainstream society. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I also have the honor to introduce Dr. Professor V. Rajshekhar, English and Foreign Language University. Professor Rajshekhar is a faculty in Department of English Literature from IFLU, Hyderabad. Also Deputy Coordinator for Disability Service Department at the university. Professor Rajshekhar has been the forefront of promoting inclusion and diversity at universities by advocating optimal use of assistive technology, accessible academic material for the print disabled, and compliance to universal design norms at the national and international level. Professor Rajshekhar, I welcome you and thank you for being here. We have Dr. Renu Adlaka from Center of Women's Development Studies and Indian Council for Social Sciences Research, ICSR, supported Autonomous Research Institute, Government of India. She presently engaged in research on health, disability, gender, and development. She has trained in medical anthropology, and her areas of specialization include medical illness and psychiatric profession, public health system, bioethics, gender, and family. Thank you, Dr. Renu, for your presence. We look forward to hear from you. We have Mr. Pancham from Anuprayas. Mr. Pancham is the founder and CEO of Anuprayas and BrailleMate, a social entrepreneur. He started with Anuprayas with a vision to make India accessible and inclusive for people with visual disability. Anuprayas has 3 vertical inclusion, accessibility, and empowerment in 2004 when he quit his corporate career to follow his passion. BrailleMate is a Braille-based merchandise that aims to sensitize society toward visual impairment. Thank you, Mr. Pancham. And we really look forward to hear you keenly. And I'm sure with Anuprayas, you can further highlight how we can ensure that Braille and BrailleMate can be made more having easier access to person with visual disabilities. So thank you all. I think without taking much of the time, we'll begin the session. I call upon Professor Anil Gupta from the National Institute of Disaster Management to present his views on how visual impairment can have a better access to government initiatives and schemes. Professor Anil Gupta.
Thank you. Thank you for giving a very pertinent introduction to this theme, and my compliments to the COVID Academy and Sphere India for organizing this discourse today. As the world has changed a lot, and world is still changing a lot. In fact, each and every disaster is giving us a lot of lessons, and that is what we say, that with each disaster we face and we manage, we need to improve for the future disasters. And now, past decade or so, the focus is on mainstreaming. And when we talk of mainstreaming, it is two-way process. So we on one hand, we say that we mainstream the disaster risk reduction are the capacities to deal with disaster-related emergencies and relief, dealing with the relief operations into communities. And when we say community, then certainly there is a need, and also the vision of the holistic approach and inclusive approach. And one thing that we all have agreed globally, that each one of us is differently abled. Actually, the world that we used to have for some time, the disabled, actually is no more in practice, because each one of us, whether physically, whether mentally, each one of us has some kind of disabilities and some kind of abilities, and above, each one of us having some special abilities, and that is the current focus in looking into the capacities, and particularly the community capacities are the capacities of community members. So this notion also applies with the people who are visually impaired, because they are differently abled. As when there is no electricity or there is no light, we cannot have the idea of the things, and we cannot have the excess of the information about the things surrounding us. but the people, they have that I would say that different ability, so they are especially able. And this is the principle I would recommend that we use when we discuss about that how government initiatives can bring them into the mainstream of development and mainstream of disaster risk reduction also. Why I say mainstream of development? Because the very purpose of disaster risk reduction is to ensure that the development path, whether at the big scale, we say that national level or state level or sub-national level, but bringing down to local level initiatives. So, for example, we need physical abilities, but we also need mental abilities, and there are a lot of abilities which are needed when we talk of capacities. So, the recent initiative of Government of India of the transition of the National Disaster Response Fund and State Disaster Response Fund, NDRF and SDRF, into the new form, which is now called National Disaster Mitigation and Response Fund. So now a substantial amount and substantial scope of activities in the pre-disaster phase to enhance the preparedness is there, and the monetary resources are also there. So that is one of the major scope that is available with us, that how the visually impaired people, and how the technologies, and how the information, access of information can be benefited for these people. And now when we talk of utilizing these funds or the benefits to differently abled people or visually impaired people, so 3 dimensions: in capacity building and research, because globally when the world is transforming, now there is more and more use of artificial intelligence. We are moving very fast towards not only automation, but very fast moving towards robotics. So how the communication between the differently abled person, I am talking in general, but visually impaired in person, with this technological inventions are I would say that, for example, machines or robots. So this research is already on pace, but we need to look at the emotional dimensions, humanitarian dimensions also, because even in robotics now we have started talking about the robo rights. So similarly, how this human rights and the rights of the differently abled people and the rights of machine are going to synergize, and how do we look at? Then there are significant government programs in the area of education, health, and social welfare. And since the COVID-19 Academy, Sphere India has been taking up good initiatives in looking at the corporate social responsibility initiatives in this direction. So looking at the educational programs, including the adult program, adult education, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, and alternative education. Now a lot focus with COVID-19 has moved to online kind of education, computer-based education. So how this will in synergy with the and kind of alternative platforms with Braille facility can help us. So these are the dimensions where one focus I think has to be how public information can be made more accessible to people through Braille, and even the technological inventions in the area of ICT, how the mobile phones, the screens with the Braille facility can be made easily accessible and cheaper. But beside this, I also have would like to make a special point here, that the popularizing the Braille is very important. And why I say it's important? Because it is simple and it is very common for all the languages. For example, if we talk about Latin, if we talk about Sanskrit, or if we talk of any language, unless it becomes an alternative language for the masses, there will be questions. So even the people who actually do not necessarily require Braille should, a good number of people, if they start taking interest in the Braille language, certainly we will gradually will start understanding the benefits also, because that is totally a touch base, and now a lot of ICT initiatives are there, that how the screens facilitate the Braille communications. So mass use, because there are two issues which I see here, that the people who have no other way than to use Braille, the visually impaired people, they should get the correct information. So if the masses are not knowing that what information their fellow member of the society who is dependent on Braille is getting, so this has to be seen. If more people are aware about Braille and more people are using, and it is part of their habit, then the correct information will go to people who actually require it. Second thing, when Braille is being popularized only for people who are visually impaired, then there is also a risk of unnecessary information loadings. So what is the real information that is needed? So screening of the information, that is also important. So people who are associated with this kind of members in our communities, in our society, in our families. So not only the caregivers are their associates, but other people who are otherwise not directly associated, but as a member of the society, we should take interest in learning Braille. So how much we can popularize among masses? There are many members among us who take interest in learning languages. I find some of my friends know more than 4 languages, 5 languages. So we can look at these kind of people who have a lot of interest in learning languages, and we can motivate them to learn Braille, and then it will be indirectly a great benefit in facilitating the screened out and correct information to the people who actually need it. So these are some thoughts which came to my mind, and we can also do a kind of a scoping exercise, maybe jointly with the Sphere India and other colleagues who are participating here, that how the Braille technology and use of Braille can be mainstream across key sectors of development that can indirectly influence of the life of the people who are otherwise vulnerable. So thank you very much for inviting me to share some of my thoughts, and over to the moderator, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Gupta. Especially your point, more people should be using Braille, is something very well taken. However, as you are aware that many children have been dropped out of the schools are closed, and access to education has also become a challenge in this current situation, especially the pre-primary, especially the children who are visually challenged and was able to access their first year of education. But I hope the situation will improve. And I also hope that NIDM will take forward the issues related to person with visual disabilities accessing information at the time of pandemic disaster to the key stakeholders. Thank you, Professor Gupta. Now, may I call upon Mr. Shiva Mohan Rao, if he could start his. Yeah, Mr. Shiva Mohan Rao.
Yes, Shakeeb.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shakeeb. Good afternoon, everybody. This is a good opportunity to speak on this occasion. So my special thanks to Sphere India, the entire team, the academics team who has been working hard in terms of having this kind of a session to inform people about the importance of the Louis Braille Day. Very well said that this is a day where we all have to celebrate the birthday of Louis Braille. It is very interesting, and definitely I'm sure that this sort of discussions will should lead definitely to some sort of changes, as Professor already mentioned. So it should lead to definitely to many more changes in the coming years. Yeah. So my topic is to share some of the experiences as a person with visual impairment, and also the gaps in terms of reality. So I'll be speaking something which is reality, what I experience as a person with visual impairment, having a person by birth. I'm having this visual disability, and I have been living with it, and I know every day what is a life of a person with visual impairment is all about. Yeah. So with that, I would like to just touch upon some of the things. As you already said, even Shakeeb also mentioned that if you see the education of children with visual impairment in the past, I would say almost 11 months, because of this pandemic, if you see, the education has become online today. It is all digital technology and all that. As you rightly mentioned, it's very, very challenging for children who are living, especially in the rural areas. We are talking about mobile technology, we are talking about internet facilities. Imagine children living somewhere in remote villages, children with visual impairment having access to education. What would have been happened in this last 11 months of duration? What they would have learned in this last 11 months? Yeah. So I'm sure all of you will agree that there are a lot of places, the remote areas, rural areas where mobile phone is still a dream, and internet facility is still not available in many places. Yeah. So that is one of the fact that comes to my mind immediately. Second thing is, as a person with visual impairment, I also experience, whether the information that is being provided for people with visual impairment, whether that is accessible, whether the information relating to pandemic is available in the Braille, whether the prevention, the precautionary measures that should be taken by people with visual impairment are accessible for, the information is accessible, whether that is provided in Braille, whether that is being provided in terms of, for people with low vision in a large font or in an audio form or whatever way. The information has to reach each and every citizen of this country. It is not just, enough to, I see the health department people coming to houses every day, distributing pamphlets and all that, which gives information about COVID, the precautionaries. What about people with visual impairment? What about a person like me? How will I know? So, of course, we live in cities, so we have access to technology. Television is there. We know about the using of mobile phones and all that. What about a woman, 40-year-old, 50-year-old woman with visual impairment living somewhere in a rural village? How do you, like all of us, expect her to know about the preventive measures that needs to be taken. Yeah. So these are all certain practical things that we face on a day-to-day basis. And also, if you see the Braille education, in my experience, what I have seen is it is mostly limited to the education sector. It stands with that. I know that there are a lot of organizations, there are a lot of institutions, national institutes are providing Braille education to visually impaired people. But what about the other sectors? What about the health sector? How much is the information about prevention, about promotion, about this information being disseminated in various formats to people with visual impairment? And the other sectors I would also like to bring to your attention. Shakeeb was saying about the livelihood sector, especially the training programs, especially the skill development training programs. There are a lot of programs that happen to improve the the capacity building of farmers in this country. I have not seen information being provided to farmers in Braille. If there is a farmer with visual impairment, is the information being provided in Braille? For instance, people go and attend a lot of training programs. I have also attended a lot of training programs, workshops, seminars organized by the institutes, big institutes. For example, I'll tell you, there was a training program which I attended on the farmer producer companies. I asked them, do you have material in Braille? They said, no, sir, sorry, we don't have. I have been to so many workshops. I have heard from many of my visually impaired friends whether the information, whether the material, the course material was provided in alternate forms. The answer was no. I have seen, some of the training institutes. Like for example, I also come across the dairy development, where people want to take training on animal husbandry, dairy farming, beekeeping, horticulture, organic farming, so many sectors. But whether people with visual impairment, are they getting access to information? Are they getting whatever the sighted people are getting information in Braille, large font, or in soft copies, digital, in different forms, whichever they require? We come across a lot of training programs happening with the women self-help groups, the women federations and all that. Whether information is being provided to women with visual impairment about about the training programs, the course material is being provided in the accessible format, is still a big question mark. I see, there is a lot of gaps in terms of the reality when it comes to the reality. If you take the training programs provided by most of the departments, whether it is agriculture, fisheries, whether it is, the training programs given by the NABARD, whether the information that is being given to people who attend training programs, whether that is accessible, whether that is provided in Braille and other formats, is still a big question. So this is what is the reality. Every day, as a person with visual impairment, in my experience, there are a lot of issues that we face. Transportation. Many a times, we have this difficulty. Whom do we ask? What is the bus number? Because I travel by local bus here in Bangalore. So earlier, at least, we used to have this audio announcements. This is the route number, this is the bus number. But after some time, I hear nothing. Sorry to say about that, but I strongly feel that the organizations, the civil societies, DPOs, and the blind people's organizations have to put a lot of pressure, a lot of advocacy, a lot of lobbying has to happen, because whatever I see, the Braille the information that is being provided or audio announcement that is provided, it's all temporary. I always see it is very temporary. After some time, after a few months, they would have all vanished. Where is the Braille signages? Some time ago, I heard that Braille signages are being provided in the railway stations, in the bus terminals, but I don't see them now. I only see some of the things like the tactile flooring is provided. Braille markings are provided in some of the lifts here and there. Not many lifts. I still don't see lifts having Braille signages. Currency. That's another big debate going on from many years. Whether the currency, the coins and the notes that we use, are they accessible? Do they have Braille markings? Big question. It's very difficult to identify with the colors sometimes, and also with the size and shape of the notes and the coins. It's really tough, especially with the notes and the currency that the government is coming, in nowadays. Yeah. The gaps, what I have seen is the mindset. People talk about people with visual impairment on some occasions, and it's all forgotten after some time. Sorry to say this, but that is how the system is. Whether the systems are really inclusive, whether the places where we are living, are they accessible for people? Are they really inclusive? Whether the systems are really taking into account the challenges, the barriers that people with visual impairment face in day-to-day social life, whether that is being taken into consideration, is always a big question to me. So the gaps, what I have found is the attitude of people, the mindset, taken for granted. Okay, theek hai yaar, chalta hai. There are only one or two visually impaired people. Okay, no problem. Why that one person has to be, given so much of attention? One person is also a human being like anybody else living in this society. Many a times, what I have seen is providing information in Braille. People think it is too much. It is environment unfriendly. Printing paper, Braille paper, especially. Some people even tell, oh, that's expensive. The Braille sheets are very expensive. The printing cost is very high. These are all some of the attitudinal, issues that I come across. Some of the places, they will tell, oh, if you print material in Braille, for one page, you will have to print 3-4 pages. Oh, it's too much to do that. In many places, what I have found, okay, there is no Braille press available. I only see in some places that, the Braille is provided. Some people on their, business cards, visiting cards, Braille name and, the address is being provided. Otherwise, it is always what I have seen. The barrier is with the mindset, the attitude, the thinking of people. So I always hear that, this is how people with visual impairment get ignored, neglected, and whatever the needs of people with visual impairment are there, are kept aside. Yeah. So these are some of my thoughts which I immediately came to my mind while I was thinking about this session, sharing of experiences and realities and gaps, what I have seen. So the system should be more and more inclusive. The information should be provided in more and more accessible format, and it should not limit just to the academics. The Braille, accessible information providing should not limit itself to the academic institutions. It should go much beyond into the society and into all the sectors, all the development sectors. So with that, I stop here. Over to Shakeeb. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiva Mohan ji. Thank you. Thank you for highlighting this. Yes, we do have gaps that exist. And although we are signatory to a lot of conventions, we have policies, we have special laws on rights of persons with disabilities. But when it comes to the reality, when it comes to implementation, we still need to look into a lot of the issues that person with disabilities and person with visual impairment face on day-to-day basis. Thank you so much. Now, may I call upon the other panelist, Mr. Jacob, on talk about empowerment of person with disabilities. I may politely request all the panelists, considering we are running behind the schedule, kindly stick to the time allotted. Thank you. Thank you for understanding.
Yeah. Thank you, Shakeeb, for giving me this opportunity. Thanks for facilitating the session. First of all, I would like to speak.
Mr. Jacob, I may request kindly be a little loud.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Shakeeb, for inviting me. And I would like to extend, I'd like to thank even Spirit for providing me this opportunity. Is it fine now? Am I audible to all?
Yes, please go.
Okay.
Thank you.
My topic today is given to me is I would like to talk on the empowerment of PWDs. It's not a very new topic. Everybody, those who are attending here in this Zoom call or in this session, I think we are all empowered to speak about our rights. As we are all talking, it's about our rights, not about their rights and someone's rights. It's about rights. If we talk about people with disabilities, in every disability there are different various challenges are there. In case of accessibility, as my previous speaker spoke on the accessible literature, accessible science, accessible information, even accessibility for people with locomotor disability, even to reach some of the places. This all is happening. So now I would like to share the experiences from World Vision, how we have empowered. We have been empowering, first of all, children with disabilities. I would like to take that example, and I would like to come to the people with disabilities. I know my time is at 5 minutes only, but I will try to put it in this way. Why I wanted to talk. When we live today we are celebrating or we are observing the Louis Braille Day. When he was a child, at the age of 3 years, I think he lost his sight. He has come from the village in the France. All of us know. He is from the village. One person has come from village, and now he has become a hope to the entire visual impaired brothers and sisters in the world. So the same inspiration, what we did, we thought of moving children with a disabilities movement we started in our organization, bringing children with disabilities, irrespective of all types of disabled children, we are trying to bring at one place. By bringing them, we are ensuring that they are empowered to know their rights, and we are trying to build their confidence. Because most of the way I am sharing this initiative of our voice of the children with disabilities, most of the children who are attending for this our voice workshops and assemblies are 80 to 90% of the children coming from village background. When they're coming to these workshops, they don't even speak, they don't even say their names also. But this workshop we are following for 3 days. By the time they leave, they are made as champions, they're made as leaders. They go to their homes. Once they go to their homes, in 3 days workshop, we talk about their rights. We also prepare them as leaders, and also we talk about how to handle within the policy makers, how we can take it up, how you can take an advocacy at our level. These are some of the topics we deal with them. Now I can say, as a result of our initiative of our voice children with disabilities, Many children are made as a leaders. Now they are accessing their rights and they started collecting data. They started gathering small gatherings and forming them as a disabled people organization, DPOs. And they are doing local level advocacy for certificate, pensions, even the livelihood, even with the world vision, not only with the government, because we are making sure that as a world vision, we want to mainstream children and people with disabilities in our programs. When you are advocating with the government, you don't forget to advocate even with the government, with the world vision, because you have to advocate with world vision also. Because whatever programs are there for world vision, children with disabilities should be mainstreamed, or people with disability should be mainstreamed. So that's why they used to go and talk to the manager and the program level people, program staff and all. Why you are not inviting us? Why you are not giving this livelihood opportunity? That's what we are empowering them. Recently, we have done with them citizen-wise action, that is one scorecard on mainstreaming education. What are their challenges? This program, we have done it in almost all across the country by involving about 6,000 children with disabilities, approximately 6,000 children with disabilities. All types of children with disabilities we have taken from 5th standard to even up to 10th standard we have taken. We have divided them as a primary education, secondary education, higher education. So when we came to know that the scoring and the results are very alarming, though government is saying that mainstreaming education, no child is left or no one is left behind as per our sustainable development goals, but our education system is not equipped to handle disabled children. Some of the schools, as we all know, that it is simply dumping children into the classroom without knowing, without teaching them. Just they wanted to make sure that. So in this way, we made them just now. This is your issue. Now you have to go and talk to the education department. Now you have to go and talk to the policy makers. We are connecting. Now what we have done is, as per my knowledge, of course, some of our eminent people are there. Everybody is involved in the DPOs. DPOs are very much functioning at the state level. But somehow at the district level. But village or panchayat level DPOs are not actively participating. But that initiative we have taken, because most of our programs are involved in the village level. We are, as we know, as a World Vision, we are working in the very remote locations where they don't know what is their right and what they have to do and all. So now what we are doing is we are trying to form the village level DPOs for local advocacy, so that everybody will get it. One example I wanted to give here, in the sense how I was dealing with one of the DPOs in Vijayanagaram, that is in Andhra Pradesh, one place. So when I visited that project, I asked the DPO members, all the PWDs, how many of you are having certificates? For my surprise, everybody. Of course, that is not only their advocacy, I can say, of course, government of Andhra Pradesh also very favor to disabled people. Everybody raised their hands. Then I also asked, how many of you are getting the pension?
Mr. Jacob, I'm sorry, I have to interpret. We have limited time.
Okay. So, okay, thank you. Definitely, I will close it. By saying this one, I will close it. Now still, for the World Disabled Day, they went and they were begging, they were asking for some donations. Then I said, see, the people are having pension, every monthly pension. You are already empowered. Again, why you are going and asking? Now you should be able to give to others, not taking from others. You should be able to give to others. So that, I think that needs to be done from our side. So this is what I would like to share. Thank you so much for this one, though it is a short time, but through our voice, I can say this from village children have made as leaders. They have gone to New York, UN General Assembly. They spoke about their issues and they also met policymakers. They involved in the policies changes. Thank you so much.
Thank you for highlighting the work of World Vision India for empowerment of persons with disabilities. Now may I call upon Mr. Jose Kurian from Humanity and Inclusion.
Yes, Shakeeb. Thank you very much, Shakeeb. And meanwhile, I would like to share my screen just for a short I hope
Sure.
I
Please go
hope
ahead.
if it is visible, please let me know.
Yeah, yes, it is visible. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Mr. Jose,
Yeah, I
it's
know.
already,
Yeah,
yeah, we are running behind the time.
I know.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
may
I'll try to. I'll try to.
short.
I'm not presenting a big presentation, but just. But before going this presentation, I would apologize for a thing like the Shiva Mohan points. Like, see, for example, if we are having any colleagues with visually impairment in this group, in this session, this presentation could have make a kind of a screen reader format, and we should have sent in advance. But due to, I'm sorry, because if I say some reason, then it will be like a excuse. So I'm not telling any reason. But I know one thing: in the initial stages, COVID Academy used to make all the presentation in a screen reader format, and they save it in their archive. So maybe I hope this also. Okay. So I'm just, we are, before that, very quickly about Shakeeb already in his introduction talked about Handicap International. We work with cross disability, all people with persons with the disabilities, no matter it is physical disability or intellectual or visually impairment. And in India, we started 1988 in various areas like health and rehabilitation, emergency response, risk reduction. Now, one important core area of our work, we provide technical support to private sectors because we were talking about empowerment, we were talking about inclusion mainstream in right from the beginning of this session. So we also try to do some sort of mainstreaming and inclusion. So based on this area, I would really like to share a short case study which we are doing with a private sector company. And before that case study, we were talking about inclusion. So we all know that for any kind of activity limitation or disability, means so-called disability, so there are two factors: personal factors and environmental factors. Now, personal, we all know, something related to, it could be health or it could be any other reasons. Now, environmental, here it is importance of, I think, Braille. Like, we are talking about accessibility, we are talking about the people around us, we are talking about the communication accessibility, these all the things. So I just want to touch these is leading to a kind of a problem. Means these both together, when it comes, then no, the person with the disabilities or visually impaired people situation is going in a kind of a handicap problem. So then coming back to our model, like we are calling it as a HI, Handicap International Model on Inclusive Employment. We are having a collaboration, and I will try to explain in the slides. Some pictures also I have added. In this particular slide, we are having a logo of Michelin tires. It's a tire company, and one India map where I'm highlighting the Tamil Nadu state. So now we are having a collaboration with between Michelin Foundation, it's a tire manufacturing, for a promoting employment for people with disability. Again, here, it is not for a particular type of disability. We are targeting all type of, no matter it is a visually impairment, physical or intellectual disability. So under this project, we are working with Michelin India site in Chennai. It's a factory, tire manufacturing factory, and around 2,000 employees are working. And why we are giving so importance, or why this project, what is the uniqueness of in this project? See, we have already heard a lot about placement, recruitment, post-placement training. But here we are looking not only the placement or recruitment, we are just working in 5 different dimensions. That is like right away starting from the governance or leadership level. Then we also parallelly we will work with the HR practice, HR team, HR management, recruitment, and the internal culture. That is very important. aspects. And again, the another area is accessibility area, accessibility of the infrastructure, accessibility of the communication and the IT system. And then it is also again, see, we all are NGOs or development sector, we will try to start something and we have to look another place. So, but the program needs to continue. So we are also working with the company to link with the different stakeholders who are working, so that they can relay. For example, in terms of sourcing, in terms of getting technical expertise, these all the things. So now, in these 5 dimensions, what we are doing, what we are trying to do is a kind of we did a kind of a need assessment in each domain, and same time we also did a participatory accessibility. As you see in the slides picture, we included in our accessibility audit team all type of persons with a disability. There was a visual impairment person, there was a physical impairment, and same like speech and hearing or hearing impairment people, and wheelchair users, this thing. And based on the findings from the assessment and the accessibility audit, we developed a inclusiveness improvement action plan, so that at a time, same time, parallelly, based on this action plan, we are trying to work with the company. And some of the picture I'm just adding in the slides, like some inclusive event we conducted. And another important aspect of this project is we are providing, Handicap International is providing on-site coaching and mentoring support to the company as well as to the employees. And this is not like for a short time, for 1 month or 1 week, something like that. It is for the entire duration of. So one of the experienced person based within the factory, and that is really helping the company to build their capacity, build their confidence. And because there was a lot of questions. The questions, when we go to the private sector, immediately the questions will come. See, in this case, they can tell that we produce a truck tire. What is the matter of disability in this? And we are a big employer business. We have a lot of confidentiality things. So if we make a lot of adaptation, modification, these all things, it can affect these things. And then again, some of the previous panelists were mentioning about this issue, like which job, because usually there is a perception among the community or the society that people with visual impairment or people with disabilities can do a kind of a corner job.
Mr. Jose,
Yeah, I'm trying to finish. So there are a lot of questions. I'm trying to finish. So there are a lot of questions we can address due to this on-site coaching and on-site supporting. So there are a lot of progress we can see in the within the company. They started recruitment. There is already a people with visual impairment. People started working, and in a good like a kind of a machine operator with the reasonable adaptations or whatever the modifications we could make. And the company themselves developed a kind of a equal opportunity policy. They started an apprenticeship program. So in this way, there are some progress is going on. Still, there are lot to go. And sorry, I could not explain more about things, but just before going to end my slides, I just want to put one questions for all of us to reflect. I'm not expecting the answer. So I just made a kind of how our language. So I just put a name, just imaginary, I like this name, Ramya. So there is two, Ramya is disabled. Or the other way, Ramya is a teacher and she has a disability. So let us think which sentence is good, where we are giving priority, first priority for the disability or first priority for the person. So that's all from my short way. Thank you very much. Over to Shakeeb.
Thank you, Mr. Jose. I really appreciate you explaining the slides also. That was very helpful for our friends who have visual disabilities and attending this webinar. Now, without taking further time, I may call upon Dr. Victor. Dr. Victor is from Samathanan Trust.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Victor, please go ahead.
Okay. My session is about ensuring the rights of persons with disabilities and opportunities. Okay. Particularly persons with visual impairment. When we talk about rights, if I try to list the rights, say right to education, right to work, right to freedom, right to speech, right to equality, right to constitution, right to right against exploitation, right to religion, right to language, right to culture and all. If you remove the phrase right to, what remains? If you remove the phrase right to, what remains? Education, health, employment, work, freedom, speech, language, religion, culture, so on and so forth. What are these? These are nothing but human needs. These are nothing but human needs. Thus, rights are nothing but human needs. When human needs are legitimized, when human needs are legitimized, or when the human needs are brought under the legal framework, then human needs become human rights. Today, we have three important documents which legitimizes the human needs as human rights. You have UN Declaration on Human Rights 1948. We have International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. We have International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights 1966. And we have national rights also. We have national legal rights. We have acts. We have policies. We have rules, regulations, and all these things. This is one part. The second part, how to ensure these rights are enjoyed by people with visual impairment. My previous panelists have already clearly explained that how people with visual impairment can enjoy their human rights. There are three important barriers which hinder their participation from enjoying their human rights and their opportunities and fundamental freedoms. The first barrier is attitudinal barrier or social barrier. The second barrier is institutional barrier. The third barrier is structural or environmental barrier. The first thing what we have to do is we have to dismantle these barriers. We have to dismantle these barriers. We have to destroy these barriers. Unless we destroy these barriers, persons with visual impairment in particular, persons with disabilities in general cannot enjoy their all human rights and fundamental freedoms on an equal basis with others. Probably I can, there is no time also, I conclude with this.
Thank you, Dr. Victor.
Yeah.
I may request Ms. Ash H. Kiba from Nagaland Disability Forum to talk about impact of COVID on visually challenged.
Thank you, Mr. Shakeeb, for the time, and thank you so much, the organizers, for letting me speak on the topic of impact of COVID to the visually impaired. Well, since the time is limited, I won't be focusing on the various impact of type of in different sections, but I'll be mostly focusing on the education. Anyway, impact of COVID to the visually impaired varies in vast manner. When as we all know, they cannot see. It is a huge challenge for them to, respect and maintain the social distancing. The nature of their life is touch and smell, as the countless mobility in this world is unknown to them. Because of the lack of accessible information, like the other panelists, the earlier panelists have already mentioned about that, lack of accessible information, they did not get important information about the time going on, like the information about the virus that is going on, and the precaution that is needed to be taken in this COVID period. When it comes on education, many of the students, like as we all know, particularly focusing on my state, we don't have proper schools for institute for the visually impaired, or we don't have accessible or inclusive schools for the visually impaired. So most of the students, they go out for the further studies, for the education. Because of this COVID, what they have to go through is they have to come back to our own states, and at the same time they have to continue their studies. So what they have to go through is they call us up and they're like, Miss, if we come back home, we don't have a software in a computer. We are not accessible to the software, so we cannot continue our studies. And we really want to continue the studies. That is what they say. Because like our earlier panelist has already mentioned, the software and the accessible schools are not available here in our state, and I'm sure most of the other states in India must be going through this situation, and many visually impaired friends are going through these problems as well. So one of the visually impaired friends, they come up with the problems, with the issues, saying like the social distancing is very mandatory in this period. And what I fear the most is I always have one assistant who sit along my side to transcribe my answers. So, and my exam is coming, the upcoming exam that she can imagine that it's not possible for her to write her exam. So that is another, problem that she had to go through. And also one of the students says,
Ash, are you there?
I think it's the network problems.
Ash? I think we have lost Ash. Maybe when she returns, we'll continue with her session. I may request Dr. Suraj.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah. Yes, you are audible and visible also. Dr.
Yeah.
Suraj,
So I would like,
please
So I would like to share. Yeah, sure. I would like to share my screen before I start. So I will try to make accessible as much as possible, because so long.
and please kindly explain what is there in the slide. For the
Sure. Share screen. Why it is not coming? Hold on. I think someone has to stop screen sharing. I think someone is still sharing the screen. Am I right? The previous slides, the previous speaker, Dr. Victor,
So you can just click on your screen. Share screen will be there on your screen.
That is there. That is there. I know it, but why is it not showing here? It is not done. I will speak.
So we could share
Shall
screen
I
some
share
few
from my side?
seconds ago.
Yeah, can you do from there? Yeah. Okay. So first of all, thank you, Sphere India, for having me for this discussion on World Braille Day. So my name is Dr. Suraj Singh Sanjam. I work in All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, and I'm looking after Vision Rehabilitation and Training Center here in Dr. Rajendra Prasad Center for Ophthalmic Sciences, AIMS, New Delhi. So I will try to make my slides accessible to all the participants, to the panelists here in this platform. So to begin with, my talk is all about alternate latest assistive technology for people with visual impairment. Yeah, so we have talked about Braille, so because Braille is a must, Braille is a mandate. So on top of that, we should also know about what are the latest technology available, particularly for people with visual disability. So next slide. So now, as you know, so visual impairments could be, right from the very small childhoods up to the adults, mid-age, and the senior citizen. So each and every ages, having visual disability, they have a unique challenges individually and family and society, as well as provider. So me as being a provider, so we have a unique challenges for every individual with visual disability. Suppose a child comes to my clinic, so what is his or her challenge? And then at the same time, a person who is around, say, 40 years old, maybe 55 years old, so he will have a unique challenges. So it's a challenges for a provider as well. Today, one ex-principals of Aligarh University, so he visited our clinics. So he has a unique challenges. So next slide. Next slide. So as you know, I will not go into detail. So there are, so many impact on, low vision and blindness people. So I will not go into detail. So many of us, say, starting from our, colleague, friend, Mr. Rao, has explained about the unique challenges, various challenges in outdoor, indoor, going around, travel, everything. So, so this challenge is very unique for each and every individual, though there are certain challenges could be a common. Next slide. So nearly 50% of them, before that, nearly 50% of them, this visually disabled people, so they think that we are totally cut off from the surrounding. So next slide. To manage this people with visual disability, so the first thing we should come in our mind, every disabled, you say, so assistive device, assistive technology is a must. So assistive technology is must to improve their functioning, to improve their performance, to be able to integrate into society. So next slide. So these are the assistive technology for all our own. So coming to the assistive technology for visual impairments. So the assistive technology for visual impairment is have been evolved over a time. So here we can categorize into three. The first is traditional assistive device. Here we have Braille, screen readers, magnifiers, cans. The second one is mainstream assistive device. So we say mainstream school. We don't say normal schools. We say mainstream school, like that. Mainstream assistive devices. So what are those? Smartphones, tablets, and other accessible applications. Because nowadays there are so many accessible applications for people with visual impairment. So the third is state-of-the-art assistive technology. So here so many computer-based, ICT-based assistive devices are coming up. So for example, automated Braille learning technology. So the one South Korean company, they visit my clinics and they have developed some kind of dot mini. So this is the Braille, this automated Braille learning technology. So the person who wants to learn Braille, so he or she doesn't need any teacher. The machine will tell you how to learn the Braille. The the machine, the device will tell you so how to learn the Braille. So the self-learning Braille. And then a refreshable Braille display, as you know, this is another state of the art, and finger reader. So nowadays, finger reader is another, state of the art assistive device. And there are so many other, artificial intelligence smart lenses, glasses. So for example, Orcam My Eye. This is an Israeli-based company. So they visit our clinics. The India branch, the head of the India branch, they visited our clinics and they have done some kind of demo. This is Orcam My Eyes. This is the artificial, intelligent smart lens. And there's a hands-free wearable mobility tool. So here is the ultrasonic sensors. So use with the help of ultrasonic sensors, like not as a smart can. So this is the must beyond a smart can. The show on, there are so many other state-of-the-art assistive technology. Next, please slide. Yeah, there's so many classification of assistive technology. Go next slide. Keep next. Next, there are so many assistive device and classification other things. So out of this, next slide. Out of this thousands of assistive device, so the time has come to focus on digital assistive technology for people with visual impairment. Next slide. So now we talk about Digital India. So our Honorable Prime Minister announced Digital India in 2015, July 1st. So with the objective of connecting countryside rural India with mobile data. So under this Digital India, there's so many initiatives are being implemented. So like e-shopping, e-bills, e-ticket, e-health, e-education, e-sign. There are so many e-sampark, e-hospital. So next slide. So we should not forget there are another special group of people in the society. Okay, we should not forget them. We should not leave behind to those visually impaired people from our society. They should be part of the Digital India. Next slide. So when you talk about, next slide, yeah. So when you talk about the Digital India, so nowadays, most of us, I'm very much sure here in this platform, there are 37 participants. So every one of us own a smartphone or tablets or computer, laptop, and at the same time, mobile data connection. So these are the very frequently used assets, the items in today's society. So this uses has been increased so much nowadays. Next slide, because of this Digital India. So as per the latest data, okay, so there are more than 700 million people use smartphone in India. But coming to the smartphone is a part of the digital technology. So the 5 different things we should talk about smartphone. So this smartphone and tablets, computer, what are the 5 different things we should talk about under this smartphone? The first is accessible. Device is accessible or not. The second one is accessible platform or operating system. The third one is accessible software and application. The fourth, accessible contents. And the last one is access to digital literacy or training facilities. So here we should remember those smartphones, most of them, they are rely on touch screen, which is demand visual function very much. So when you see any digital device, and at the same time, touch screen, touch sensitive. So these are, visually demand. They needs visual function. So what will happen to those person with visual impairment? So they don't have a, normal visions. They don't have functional vision. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, I don't have three. Next slides. So there are many digital assistive technologies starting from smartphones and tablets. So I'll not go into details. There are so many, and these are the functions required for digital technology. Next slide. So smartphone coming to, as I told you, this is getting very much important. So the first is we have a basic simple phone. So basic simple phone, it may not be accessible to blind person, but now it comes to the smartphone, it becomes accessible over time because of assistive application, which is accessible to people with visual disability. Next slide. The next slide, this I have already mentioned, smartphone access in our country. So there are so many accessible applications for visual impairment. Be My Eyes, Wiser, ID Pro, Keyboard, there are so many. Next slide. So the problem is this is accessible device along with the application. So most of them, they are based on English language. The person who doesn't know English, and then it becomes a inaccessible. Device could be accessible, but when we talk about utility, the person knows only Hindi, and then it can be inaccessible to a person who knows only Hindi. Next slide. So we don't know how many in the country are able to access this smartphones. At the same time, this accessible application, we don't know how many of them they knew about, they are aware of this accessible application. Next slide. So this is a brief study in Delhi. So we conducted. So very few schools, they have a digital technology in terms of screen reader, smartphone, digibooks. Next slide. Very few schools in Delhi, even in Delhi. This is another tele-rehabilitation service we provide here. Again, very few, the callers we analyze, only 20% of the callers, they knew about the accessible applications. And the smartphone, nearly 46% of them, they own a smartphone from out of 101 callers. Next slide. Yeah, so this is the last slide. To be able to improve our access about the smartphone to those visually impaired, staying in remote area, village area, the four things we should remember. The first is people. Second is product, policy, and provision. People, the general public should make aware of, okay, a smartphone can be used by a blind person. So, and this is very, very important. Like a WhatsApp we use. And products, there should be a low-cost product, smartphone, because smartphone becomes an eye of a person who is having visual disability. And policy, we need to policy in place to be able to access smartphone to the person living in a remote area. And provision. So provision is very important because smartphone is available, and there should be some delivery points where to get this smartphone by a person with visual disability. Next slide. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Suraj.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for highlighting the latest technology that are available for visually impaired. I'm sure the question must be whether these are easily affordable and very much available for the person with visual disabilities. Perhaps we could have this during the question and answer session. Without taking further time, I may call upon Professor Rajshekhar from English and Foreign Language University. Professor Rajshekhar. Professor Rajshekhar, are you there?
Audio now unmuted alert. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, Professor.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, Professor, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So, good evening, all the panel members, and let me also appreciate the effort made by Spear India to bring about this kind of discussion. And I find all the previous interactions or presentations, very, very informative to say the least. And let me share what I can present from my own personal and also kind of a professional experience. Yeah, I was born blind, and Braille was introduced to me at a very early stage, and I learned it very proficiently. And I cannot tell how much Braille made a difference in my life almost 35 years ago, when there was hardly any kind of modern tools that we have today around us. Braille that time was so important, so vital. It allowed me to have the experience of learning what is writing and then learning to read. So how to read and how to write are very key aspects that I was able to learn only because of Braille. Okay, so and those days we hardly have any books being made available in India or in my own home state. There were hardly any Braille press around, and all that we had was very, very small kind of magazines which came out of Chennai and then, of course, Dehradun. But things changed.
Shakeeb Ahmed has entered the waiting room for this
I
meeting. Press F6.
began to receive a lot of help from the Western countries, and most of the literature was available from the West.
Shakeeb Ahmed has left the
But
waiting room for this
nowadays,
meeting alert.
things have really changed, and I would say that the last 10 years, more particularly the last 5 years, Braille technology has really taken a major kind of a support, I would say, or a thrust in a very positive sense. Nowadays, we have a lot of Braille tools which are becoming more popular and which are also becoming more affordable, so to say. Earlier, 5 years ago, Braille technology was considered very expensive, prohibitively expensive, so to say. But now, in the last 5 years, thanks to Dot Mini, Dot company from Korea, Dr. Suraj has already referred to it. I have the device myself with me, and we are also part of a small research about how these devices can be utilized in the education area. Okay, so Dot Mini is one, and then
Dr. Rama Prasad has left the meeting alert.
just a second.
Speech mode off.
Then Orbit is another player, and then Braille Me is another player. So we do have quite a number of affordable players which play a major role in making our own education system very inclusive and very interactive as well. And because of the fact that these devices are affordable, it's not easy for it's not difficult for the state to provide them as widely as possible at the higher education level, at least at the beginning, so that students who are in the higher education area should be able to use them, and that's one way that we can kind of move one step further in enhancing and creating that what we call as inclusion in the higher education area. So technology is really is creating new opportunities, and the rate at which technology replaces itself is another problem. But I would see that as long as technology is able to provide answers and solutions, it's always very well within our reach of being able to access it, so that our students take full advantage of these devices. We also need to think in terms of how our policies also are very important to allow these tools and these technology advancements to be able to made more realistic in terms of how they are made available to our students. So policy-wise, we need our governments, our organizations, and also our regulators, especially in this context, the University Grants Commission, should kind of revise the kind of schemes that they have for higher education, at this stage. The schemes that we have are almost 20 years old, or maybe more than 20 years old. And so it's high time that our policies are kind of redesigned or kind of reconsidered afresh, so that we have a new kind of a scheme, a support system, which takes into consideration the latest advancements in technology, the latest policies, the latest legislative provisions that are made part of our legislation, the recent legislation being the Rights for Persons with Disabilities of 2016. So there is a major need to revamp and to redesign and to kind of rephrase our schemes, our policies in tune, which should be in tune with technology and our policies or our provisions enlisted by our own national laws and national legislations. Well, this requires also another major kind of a area in terms of providing the right kind of training to our own students. Well, if we need training, then we need trainers. So that's another major area that we all should think, especially the government should provide sufficient kind of trained personnel who could work in institutions of higher education. Most of us are aware of the fact that universities, it is becoming more and more, this is important that universities have what are called enabling units or disability service support centers. And these are becoming increasingly popular across the country. And of course, I'm happy to be a part of one such unit at my university. We have a very vibrant support system, and students are very well kind of taken care by the university. But this is kind of becoming more widespread, and more institutions are coming forward to have such centers. However, the personnel who are working at these centers are not the ones who are really trained as such. So there is a need to have a new crop of well-trained professionals who would be in a position to run these centers or offer services in the most professional and in the most proficient possible, proficient way possible, so that students are at the advantage of both training and also the tools that this training and the technology would provide. So that's how I would see a lot of scope for improvement, a lot of scope for change, as it has always been. But let me also say that these are very interesting times in terms of how disability has moved on, both in terms of visual impairment and the other areas of disability. Things are definitely changing, attitudes are changing, improving, I should say. And how much is the improvement? It's always a debatable issue. Some of us might say we want a lot of improvement. Others may say change is taking place. Others could also be critical about what changes are actually there and what other changes which are actually required on the ground. That's another debate. But I see things as definitely positive, and of course, without hiding the fact that there's a lot of change that is also required at the same time. Going back to my own professional experience.
Nice idea.
Hello?
Professor Rashika, please go ahead.
Yeah. At a professional level, I, as a teacher in the university, I do use a lot of Braille in the classroom and also for my professional reading and otherwise. Of course, not that Braille is the only way. I also read. I also use a lot of audio assisted technologies and softwares, etc. But the way that Braille has become available and the way Braille is opening up new vistas of learning such subjects which were not even considered possible for blind students to learn, for example. Maths is another area. Science, computer science is another area. Sciences itself is another area. So the way that Braille is opening up new vistas is something that is very well documented already. And this is something that we need to really popularize as much as we can. Traditionally, blind students tend to choose humanities. That started to change in the last 10 to 15 years. It started to change further in the last 5 years. And I'm sure Braille will open up new areas in the years to come. Phonetics, linguistics, science, even medicine, psychology. I know one faculty, one scientist who is working for NASA, National Aeronautics Space Organization in the United States. We have a visually impaired scientist who is also working in the space domain and who is also using Braille in a very creative and in a very, very interesting way. You know? So I see a lot of change, and that's what I would like to say. So professionally, yes, new areas, new subjects, new stars are always there on the horizon. And what we need is a lot of awareness. What we need is a lot of awareness, a lot of dissemination of information. And this is what I would like to say from my own perspective. And thanks for the opportunity given to me.
Thank you, Professor Rajshekhar. Now, may I call upon Dr. Renu from Center for Women Development Studies to present on disability perspective and linkage with gender.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Renu. Please go ahead.
Can the Sphere India team please open my presentation, because there is a problem with share from my side. So can that be opened? I'm going to now move the discussion a little away from the practical and experiential issues, which are really important, to a slightly more conceptual issue, and I'm going to look at it, look at the conceptual issue of both disability through the lens of gender. So can I please have the presentation? I'm not able to see it. I'm not able to.
Is it visible?
It's 1 minute. Let me just see. Yeah, now it's visible. So I'm just going to jump into it. You know, we've been talking about disability and, particularly visual disability, but in my presentation, I'm going to look at gender, and I'm going to look at disability in a more of a holistic category. We know that in disability, there are various impairment groups, and there are various needs and specificities to each disability. But since the UNCRPD and the discourse that's been developed around is that there's a need to look at disability as a category, because it shows commonality of experiences and the structural marginalization that all disabled people are experiencing in their lives. But even within disability, we know there are multiple classifications, physical, mental, sensory learning. There are chronic diseases which result in age-related disabilities. I think these are very diabetes and heart disease in many parts of the world are disabilities. You can have it from birth or you acquire it. And there are the visible disabilities, say like blindness or hearing impairment, which is hidden unless you interact closely with the person. Then there are disabilities which are static, like if you're amputated, and there are disabilities which are like variable, like say dementia. Next slide, please. Next slide. Right. Now, if we look at disability, I mean, we're talking about it and we have the census, but we know that actually if we have this vast category of disability conditions, it's very difficult to know what is the proportion of these conditions within the population. It can range approximately from 2 to 20%, depending on which disabilities are recognized in particular parts of the world and which disabilities are enumerated and detected through survey processes. So if we look at India, we know that, disabilities there are congenital disabilities, but actually they account for, which are from birth, which only account for around 8% of disabilities. There are disabilities like anemia, conditions like anemia, pneumonia, and malnutrition, which actually which create a higher burden of disability, which is not often recognized when we discuss issues around disability. We know that disabilities are also caused by not just congenital factors or nutritional factors, but there's a whole range of accidents, wars, aging, even, a pandemic. They say that the pandemic is actually leading to a higher number of psychosocial disabilities. So disability has multiple causes, multiple manifestations, and multiple modes of experience. And we need to recognize this when we talk about disability. And in fact, it's a very difficult thing to always recognize, because somewhere or the other, you exclude certain categories when you focus on one disability, and when you talk about disability as a larger concept, you actually don't incorporate the experiences of specific disability populations. Can we go to the next one? Now, if we go to gender and disability, please, next slide. Yeah. If we look at women with disabilities, they are socially, sexually, economically, culturally oppressed minority group. Women as a group are oppressed. Now, in addition, if you add to it disability, you can imagine some of the consequences, that it becomes almost a double jeopardy. And there is all this, there's the discrimination occasioned by being a woman, by the gender factor, and then there's the discrimination which comes due to the disability factor. So in effect, there are ways in which women with disabilities are actually, in many domains of life, particularly within the domain of marriage, reproduction, and family, more discriminated than men. And if we look at disabled men and disabled women, there are striking gender-based differences. Of course, the violence, abuse, and psychological disempowerment that women face in general, and then that women face with disabilities, is another issue that needs to be, really taken into account. Women with disabilities are denied their, sexual and reproductive rights, and part of this comes out of the eugenic discourse that women who are disabled will necessarily produce children who are disabled, and that is what society does not want, and hence you curtail their sexual and their sexual freedom and their reproductive rights. And this is again a gross violation, because as I told you, only 8% of disabilities are congenital. Next, please. Next, please. Now, if we look at, before this, the one before this, please. Yeah. If we look at disability, if we look at disability, as I have said, women with disabilities, when they are often at times when we have disabled women, many times actually the disability cancels their gender identity in many ways. For example, there is an idea which is produced, I'm just quoting some of the authors who have put forward this, there's an idea of rolelessness. See, women with disabilities, as I said, their sexual and reproductive dimensions are curtailed, and hence what is identified as typically feminine, the sexuality and reproductive domain in women's lives, is denied to women with disabilities. They are denied the roles of mothers, they are denied the roles of wives, they are denied many other women-specific roles and conditions in life because of their disability. Secondly, we have sexual objectification of women, which we consider a commodification and a violation of their rights. But with women with disabilities, many of them experience what is called asexual objectification. They are not looked at as sexual beings. They are that dimension of their personality is totally cancelled. So they are not only rendered role-less, but they are also rendered asexual. And this is again, this has nothing to do with the reality of women with disabilities and their actual lives, their desires, their aspirations, and their capacities to be women in the true sense of the word. So as when looking at women with disabilities, we need to be very careful in treating the person as a whole person, because they are subject to many discriminations, many violations, which come out of the intersection of two disempowered identity characteristics that are arising from their gender as women and from the disability as being women with disabilities. Next. If we go to COVID-19 and what has been the aspect of disability on women with disabilities, sorry, there's an error there in the title. Like most women, the experience of domestic violence has increased during the COVID pandemic. People have been confined at home, and this has again affected women with disabilities. Increased segregation. I think Ash talked about how people have been told to leave, to come home, and that has affected their education. But women with disabilities at home that has increased their segregation, and there is the lack of access to essential health services, physiotherapy, medication. Many disabled people need these to be able to manage, but the idea of social distancing, the focus in the hospitals on COVID conditions, made these needs unaddressed in the case of disabled persons. Then in many cases, you need caregivers, paid caregivers for people with disabilities to help them. I mean, even on the street for visually challenged people, you need someone to maybe help you cross the street. You need someone to help you know what is the bus number. You need so many other ways. I know several disabled people who have been just confined at home, who are living alone, and they've had extreme difficulty in managing their essential needs, daily sustenance, shopping. Not everyone can order online. Not everyone has that access. Where do you get your food from if you're living alone and there's a lockdown? So, and this is, of course, it has led to, as I talked about, the increase in psychosocial disabilities during the pandemic, the increased isolation and loneliness. This is not only affecting people in general, women as well, but people with disabilities. And here, bringing a gender perspective, it's not only women, but both men. There is extreme isolation, particularly those who have left their families. They are living in cities, they are in urban contexts, maybe they have a job. The level of both, and there is a sense of helplessness because people are not willing to come forward and under the guise of social distance, they're not willing to come forward and help people. And that lack of help, which is basic, is actually something that is really been an impact on the lives of people with disabilities, including women with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Renu. I may call upon Mr. Pancham from Anuprayas.
Hello.
On talking about innovation for challenges faced by visually impaired. Thank you.
Yeah. First of all, a very good afternoon to all of you, and a big thank you to Sphere India team and Rachel for giving me this platform to talk as one of the panelists. I'll quickly share my story, what I do and why I do. My inclination towards disability started when I was a kid. I used to volunteer as scribe for VI people, and then even my musical teacher, he was a VI person. And then when I used to work with Infosys, I used to volunteer as a CSR head and spend a lot of my weekends in blind schools. And I made a lot of VI friends. And on weekends, we used to organize blind cricket matches. And one fine day, what happened, one of my very close VI friend, he called me up and he said that he wanted to meet us. So me and my team went to their hostel. And then he narrated me that, an incident which happened to him. And he said he was supposed to go to his hometown from Mysore to some XYZ place. And he was at that platform and he asked that I need to go, to get on to a certain platform to catch my train. And somebody misguided him and he ended up waiting for the train at the wrong platform. And he ended up missing his train and he was completely aghast. He was completely shattered. And he was frustrated and he said, Pancham, if you really want to do something for us, go and install Braille signages. And before that, we used to organize, blind cricket matches where the sighted people used to blindfold and play cricket against the blind team. And to which I joke that, railway station, not my papa's, that railway station doesn't belong to my father. So he said, if you really want to do something, it has to be station. Otherwise, you can anyhow play cricket matches. And just out of curiosity, next day I went to the railway station. I approached them, and then I narrated the challenges faced by the VI community while moving in public places like railway stations. And the railway station, the supervisors, they got excited. Said, let's do this. And then Mysore was made as India's first station to have such facility where the Braille platform indicators was installed across the railings, where a VI person, when they touch, they'll get to know which platform they are supposed to go. And then we made a Braille map, which was like a blueprint of the entire station, and a VI person can kind of browse and understand, how the railway station will look like. And then Braille platform booklets to itinerary to Braille menu cards. So that's how it all started. And coming to the topic, my key takeaway, which I would like to share through my story, is that innovation is simple. So let's not complicate it. And we have so many challenges around, and given the pandemic, there are so many challenges around. It's just that we need to figure out and pick one and then just go about it. And on World's Braille Day, I would also like to share my mission, which is to make all the railway stations accessible by 2030. I know it's a very big, when we say, India and railway stations, there are about 5,000 railway stations. And by 2030, that's my mission, that's my vision coming ahead. And with BrailleMate also, it's a Braille-based merchandise where we want to sensitize through our products and also to raise fund and make 100 schools accessible for VI by providing Braille signages by next year. And we already started getting a lot of requirements from various blind schools across India. And so that's it from my side. And thank you so much. And over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Pancham. We extend all our hardest wishes to make sure that your dream of making all the railway station become accessible one day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much.
Okay, before I go for we go to a question and answer session. I think Miss Ash session is stopped somewhere. So is Miss Ash still there? Would she like to complete the session?
I think she didn't join back.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So coming to the last part, we can have a question and answer session. If there are any questions that are there to the panelists, please do type or please unmute yourself and you can ask directly or raise your hand. Okay, I think Mr. Javed Ahmed. Yeah, he has raised his hand. Mr. Javed, please go ahead. I'm unmuting you.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Javed, please go ahead.
Am I audible?
Let us know whom this question is.
This is Javed Ahmed Talk from Jammu and Kashmir, and I want to know about use of technology in the state of Braille. Braille is the good concept that has opened the educational doors for the person with visual disabilities. But in some parts of our country, still Braille copies are not available for the children, and most of the children with disabilities, visual disabilities in J&K are either dropped out, either they have to dissociate from the families and go outside. Some go Dehradun, some go Delhi for the seeking education. Even we don't have the Braille instructors, we don't have special educators that are having specialization in Braille and other visual impairment specializations. So now that technology has been working good, we have a lot of softwares available for the person with visual disabilities so that they can use Android phones, laptops, desktops, and others. but still, from the part of the government policies, we don't find these things. Only those children with disabilities can go with these things who have some family support or some organizations and NGOs are working in this sector. But in JNK, we will find a very less intervention from these organizations. So how can we come and rescue the career of the children with disabilities in those areas where the braille, the audio softwares, the books in soft copies are not available?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Javed. I think this is a very common situation that everyone, especially in disability sector and person with visual impairment, faces. Availability, in spite of having so much technology available, so much innovation, availability to the common man, to a common person, and reaching to the last mile. How do we address this issue? If somebody from the panel would like to address.
Maybe I can go first.
Yes, please, hello? Professor Rajshekar, please go ahead.
Yes. It's a very valid point. How much Braille technology is available to us in both affordable manner and also the range of options that are available from device to device is concerned. What we need is a kind of an enhanced kind of a campaign, a very aggressive campaign to popularize Braille. And just as we have what is called right to education, one important component of right to education should also be right to reading as well. If I say right to reading, I mean more in terms of the course material that we are supposed to read, our children are supposed to read at the schools, at the colleges, and at universities. So the right to reading should be another important policy intervention that we need to think, and I hope members of parliament and various NGOs, activists would realize this particular need, or else that will remain as a wish, and we don't know how long that will remain. So certainly, I think we need to push for a campaign where we argue and talk about the non-negotiable aspect of right to read. If that is brought about, I'm sure access to Braille literature will definitely be at a much desired level in the years to come. Having said that, I think parents and teachers and organizations should also step in at this level, because I do agree that given the past scenario where Braille was very expensive, importing is very expensive, paper itself is expensive. Well, there are different times so far, but now technology is changing, and there's no greater need for Braille paper as such, as long as you are able to use a refreshable Braille display. It eliminates the need for paper as such, physical paper as such, and gives us the opportunity of reading Braille electronically. So as far as the paper and the environmental concern, that can be addressed in this manner. And now teachers and organizations should really push themselves in terms of how they optimize the benefits of Braille, refreshable Braille technology. There are a lot of advantages there, and this has to be seen as a big opportunity for all of us, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rajshekar. I think Mr. Javed, that addresses your question. One more thing, Mr. Javed. Mr. Suraj has mentioned that in case if you have any requirement or any question you need to ask regarding the Braille and Braille procuring it, you can contact Mr. Suraj. The email ID is being mentioned in the chat box.
Maybe repeat the email for our benefit, because we may not be able to.
Yeah, so it is Dr. Suraj, DRSURAJ, AIIMS @gmail.com. So do we have any questions further?
Suraj Senjam has left the meeting alert. Javed Ahmed Tak has lowered hand alert.
I have one question, especially for the panelists who belong to health sector. As you are aware that person with visual disability or person with disabilities, they themselves are at the higher risk of COVID. And since we are going for a launch of COVID vaccine, will persons with disabilities be given priority over other section when vaccine is rolled out? If somebody from panel would like to address this.
Hi, Shakeeb. I'm not, this is Jose. I'm not a health professional, but one thing I can just understand that people with disabilities are more vulnerable. I mean, they are having more risk. See, especially like for a visually person with visually impairment, they use some kind of mobility device. Maybe Professor Rajashekharan can correct me if I'm wrong. So they use the white cane. They may do a lot of touch on the environment. I mean the surface and all the thing. So medically, I don't know, but just thinking they are a little more risky, you know, and a wheelchair user, if you see, because the person will be propelling the wheelchair, obviously, so he will have a kind of a contact in his hand more. So how long he can, I mean, his hands can be like, you know, keep hygiene in that way.
Yeah, exactly. And even various research have also proven that persons with disabilities are at higher risk of comorbidity condition like diabetes, hypertension, which make them more susceptible to COVID infection.
Correct.
So perhaps Professor Anil Gupta, who is representing the government in this discussion, he may take our this point, at least keep person with disabilities be given priority over when the vaccine is rolled out.
Yeah.
Okay, we have one more question coming from Mr. Javed. Is anyone here that can provide Braille books to needy children? We need youth phone and laptop too for children with visual disabilities in Kashmir belonging to below poverty line families. I think Mr. Javed, perhaps somebody may respond to you, or they may respond this to Sphere India. I think if you get touch in with the organizers regarding this.
Shakeeb, this is Mohan here.
Yes.
I would suggest him to please contact All India Confederation for the Blind, which is in Delhi.
Yeah.
The contact person is Mr. JL Kaul. I can give him his number and contact details. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So, Mr. Javed, please contact All India Confederation for Blind. And okay.
So I think we don't have any more questions.
Yes, from
so
my side.
Yes, sir. So before we end the session, here are some administrative announcements. So your certificates will be ready in next 24 hours. You can visit our website www.sphereindia.org covid19academy.org, and you can download your certificates from there. However, if you are unable to do so, as some participants may have faced some technical difficulties, do not worry. You can email us at covid19academy@sphereindia.org.in, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. And thank you, Mr. Shakeeb, and all the panelists for effectively moderating the session and for such enriching discussion. Have a great evening and see you for the next session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.